It's very possible. It sounds difficult to coordinate. It sounds like there's a lot of pieces, but I would just say, like, trust your intuition, trust yourself. This is what you want to do, right? Because I think I've always wanted to, and it's like, well, I'm not sure how to do it. I don't know if I can do it. Like, what would people
Mhm.
think? And I think, like,
Yeah.
now the world has changed, but it's still hard, right? I think you still need to just push forward always if you
hmm
want to do something.
Hi, I'm Kim Tolson and I'm the traveling therapist. It's my passion to teach therapists how to navigate online private practices and multiple income streams so they can travel the world. I'm a digital nomad with a virtual insurance based private therapy practice and a multi six-figure coaching business. I'm obsessed with entrepreneurship and developing tools that can help therapists live an adventurous lifestyle. In this podcast, I will discuss my journey as a digital nomad. I'll chat with other traveling therapists and help you navigate the complexities of running an online insurance based practice. I'm so glad to have you with me on this journey. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of The Traveling Therapist. I'm here with Diana Liao, and I'm so excited to have you with us. She's got quite an adventure coming up that she's going to tell us all about. So, Diana, I'd love to just turn it over to you and sort of learn more about you, about your journey to becoming a traveling therapist. If you could just tell us your story and what you've got coming up, I'm so excited to learn more about this.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Kim. I think, well, my journey is still in progress, and I think it's been, many years in the making. I am a licensed mental health counselor, and even that in itself was a change for me because I had been working in marketing for some time in my first career. So I decided that I wanted to make a change, and I didn't know what to do next. And so I took some time off to sort of think about it. And funny enough, like, part of the time I spent between careers was traveling. I've always
Wow.
loved to travel. So that part of me was always present from the very beginning, even when I was younger. My parents are from Taiwan. And so
Oh,
as a kid growing up, we would go to Taiwan, and the flight to Taiwan is like 14 to 16 hours or something like that.
wow. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah. And so as a kid, I loved it. I remember just like running through the aisles on the plane, like playing cards, asking for snacks from the stewardess. And so I just remember, like, I was very comfortable with long flights ever since I was young. And then in college, studying abroad on a program called Semester at Sea, which
Oh,
basically I
wow.
spent 3 months on a ship traveling around the world, stopping in
Ah,
10 different countries. Travel's always been part of my life. So it almost makes sense now that I'm finally doing this. But to make a long story short, I haven't yet been working remotely, but it's something that I've been thinking about since I made a transition to this career. And I think it all kind of came together. I took a course on online therapy with Amber Lida, right?
oh, yay.
Yeah, yeah. And I was
Me
in her
too.
group. Yeah, I think I remember seeing you there first in her group. And I did that in 2019, thinking I would start my, online practice. And I did. And then the pandemic happened, and everybody suddenly became very used to this idea of online therapy, which then made this possibility of traveling and working remotely like very realistic. And so I was starting to get ideas from the group on where I could go travel. This is like last year or the year before. And then I decided, okay, 2022, I'm going to give it a try. So I'm going to start my traveling therapist experience in January of 2022.
Oh my gosh, that's so exciting. Yeah, it's so interesting, isn't it? I think I did my Amber Lighted course, I think it was 2018, and it was so like nobody had really even thought of it really. I mean, I know there were people doing it like Amber and others, but it was so like sort of like taboo. Even in the group practice I was working in, people were like, you can't do
Yeah,
this. Now, of course, thankfully for COVID, we can all do it. It seems so much more normalized now, but yeah, I'm right there with you.
yeah. It
Yeah.
was, yeah.
So tell us, so what is your journey going to be? let us know what's going on, what your plan is.
Yeah, so I am based in New York City right now. And so
Okay.
I was thinking about where I could go, maybe like my first baby step. And, a lot of people that I spoke with, and there's a significant number of therapists already in this area, but in Mexico. So that's where I'll be
Yeah.
starting. I am spending a month in three different cities, and I'm gonna sort
Wow.
of like go dip my toe in and scout out different places and just see if I like, where I like working from, and give myself enough time in each place to do that.
Oh, that's amazing. So a month in each place, each
Yes. So
city.
the first month I'll be in Merida, which I actually connected with a couple of therapists through like one of the Facebook groups, like who are
Oh,
already there,
cool.
who have said that they love it. So Merida is my first stop. And then I will go to Mexico City for the second stop, which I've been there once for a long weekend. So I already know that I really like it there. That will be like my exciting stop. And then the third place will be a smaller town called Querétaro, which is, I mean, I know a little bit about it because I've been researching it, but it's near San Miguel de Allende. But yeah, I've heard some good things about it. And I thought, I'll go check it out and see after that if I want to stay, maybe go somewhere else. I haven't really made return trip plans. So
Wow, that's so cool. One way
yeah,
ticket.
yeah. I might have to book a return flight at some point, but yeah, for now it's the one-way ticket.
That is so cool. So what has the research process been like for you? Like trying to figure out what cities and I'm just curious, like, do you know where you're going to stay already? Are you going to do Airbnbs or like rent places for a month? How's that going to work for you?
Yeah, I think that, once I started down this like path of like, okay, I started, asking people on Facebook groups first, like, where's everybody in Mexico, and also asking questions about like, weather wise, what's the draw here. And then I actually posted about like, okay, here are the things that I enjoy. Where could I find this? What cities in Mexico would you recommend that I try next if I'm going to these three places already? So I've been getting a lot of feedback from people on Facebook groups who are expats. I've joined several expats in Mexico groups. I've joined online like your group and some other like therapists, remote therapists, groups. So I've been getting some good feedback that way. And then as far as other research, I think once I landed on one YouTube video about living in Mexico, my feed has become like, have you considered going here or here? And just a lot of bloggers that are overseas, like vloggers and bloggers that have their own YouTube channels about like living in Mexico. There's surprisingly quite a few of them. And so I've been using that to check out different cities ahead of time, just like seeing what they're filming. And then as far as accommodations, yeah, I've been going with Airbnb.
Okay.
It's just a little easier than trying to navigate like finding a rental, because you can also do it directly by going onto Facebook Marketplace. But I think a lot of the
Oh, yeah.
rentals in Mexico are for longer term stays. So if you're staying for 6 months, but since I'm only going to be there for, in each place for about a month, Airbnb makes it really easy. And also they will also discount your rate if you stay for a month or longer. So that's what
That's
I've been
so
doing for
true.
now. Yeah.
That's so true. If you go, what is it like at least 30 days, they'll give you a big percentage off, right?
Yeah, there's like a monthly discount for longer stays. And I know there's still like a lot of fees. And right now, because of what's been happening, they don't have a great cancellation policy. So
Oh,
that's the one
really?
thing to keep in mind, is that you're probably not going to get a refund if you change your plans. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Oh, that's good to know. Yeah, pay attention to
Yeah.
that. We
Yes.
just we
Cancellation
just
policy
booked
is
our
important.
first Airbnb too, starting February 2nd. We're going to become like real digital nomads, like live in Airbnbs and we're experiencing the same thing. We're like, should we do it for a month because of, you get the discount, So there's a
Yeah.
lot
But
to
then what
navigate with
happens?
Airbnb.
Yeah. Yeah.
And do you find
Exactly.
yourself like really looking at every picture to make sure it looks like perfect?
Yeah, I'm all about. Okay, so for Airbnb, my strategy has been go with a super host, or
Oh,
yeah, a
good.
super host. I filter by that first, and then I also check the all the comments and the feedback. for anything that says like high internet, like fast internet, was able to do calls with no issues. Or sometimes I'll email the hosts and ask, and some of these Airbnbs that I've looked at, they do include a photo of their speed, like a speed test.
Oh, nice.
And for some, I will email them and say, hey, if I don't see any comments about internet or internet speed, I'll say, is it possible for you to do a speed test? Here's the website to go to, do a speed test, and then send me a screenshot of that. And you know what? It's just something I've done before. And because I know, for us, it's very important to have, you know, high speed internet.
Excellent internet for sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
dependable internet. Oh, that's
Yeah.
great. So what is the speed like we should be looking for with what is it like? Is it like 30 up and 20 down or something? Like I don't remember what it is.
Yeah.
But what do you
I,
have like a
yeah.
recommendation or that?
I don't know about the exact one, but I definitely know like
Okay.
15 is too low because I've gotten something like
Okay.
that before. I'm like, oh, that's definitely too low. But yeah, I've heard that certain cities in Mexico are really, like really high speed, and others are known for not being, like their internet in certain cities are not known to be.
Oh.
It's like it's like common knowledge among expats. So I think expat groups are also really helpful to ask that question too.
To figure that out. That's
Yeah.
such a good tip though, to just like message them beforehand and see if they'll send you a speed test so you know exactly what you're walking into.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So you plan on using the internet from the Airbnbs, using their secure internet? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I got myself a VPN as well. That was something I knew that I wanted to do, and I hadn't used one before, but I just signed up for one, and I guess we'll give it a test run when I'm away.
Yeah, yeah, that'll be good. Yeah, I try to use the VPN too. Sometimes I forget, but for the most part I try to use the VPN if I'm on a public network or a hotel
Yeah.
network or something like that. Yeah, that's great because I've heard different things about Mexico. Like some people say, like once you get there to get a local SIM card and try to
Hmm.
do the internet that way. But mostly, I think I've heard what you're saying is like wherever you're staying, just make sure it has a great internet connection and do it that way.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Because, I don't anticipate myself working anywhere else or getting office space, because you could also do that,
Oh,
go
smart.
rent co-working space so you have an office. But I think I'm just going to continue working from home, but in a different country.
Yes, that is so exciting. Okay, so I'm trying to think what else I want to ask you about all that. So are you traveling by yourself or going with somebody? Okay, all by yourself?
Yeah, well, my friends coincidentally wanted to go to Merida for the holidays.
Oh,
So
cool.
I had been planning my remote work experience, and I was thinking, okay, I'm going to go to Merida like at the end of January. They decided they wanted to go for the holidays. So we are actually going to go first to just like travel. And that's actually perfect timing for me because then I'll get a chance to explore the city with friends, and then they'll leave, and then I'll start working. And yeah, it'll be a nice
Oh, that'll be
little
a nice
introduction.
transition.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's so cool. And
Hmm.
then I'm wondering, like, some of the expats that you've met, do you think you'll try to connect with them? And because I always wonder about that, going to a new country kind of by yourself and the socialization piece and, how people plan to navigate that. I'm curious what
Yeah,
you're planning with all that.
yeah, I think because I have traveled so much in the past, like for me, that's always been something that I felt comfortable with. But I
Mm.
think there's so many like fabulous groups on Facebook for stuff like that, with connecting with others. I think there's one group that I was part of called like Solo Women Travelers, and that was
Oh,
unrelated to
cool.
expat life, but just like anytime if you travel somewhere new by yourself and you want to meet up with someone. I've had some great experiences like in South Africa, meeting up with someone for a wine tasting, and somewhere else for like a dinner. And the wine tasting was really funny because the woman that I met up with happened to be a therapist as well. And she was doing
Oh, wow.
remote therapy. This was like years ago too. And I thought, oh, here's someone else who's doing this. And we just happened to meet
Wow.
on this solo women travelers group, but she ended up being a therapist from the United States. And so it was really great. So I've had really great experiences posting online first, asking people if they're going to be in a country while I'm there. And I'm also through my language lessons, like I'm taking Spanish right now.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So there's this website called Conversation Exchange where you can find conversation partners so that you can practice Spanish with them and they practice English with you. And so some of these people are actually in Mexico. So for now, it's like an online exchange. But, in
Wow.
Mexico City, meeting up with some of my conversation partners. And there's just like a lot of groups
How
online.
cool.
So I feel like for me, what I like to do is just like post a little bit ahead of time and see if anybody is there and open to doing some sort of either like a tour or dinner, something that I want to do already. And I just want to do it with someone. So
That is awesome. And what was it called? Conversation Helper? Oh,
conversationexchange.com.
conversationexchange.com. Wow, that
Yeah.
is so cool. So, how is
Yeah.
your Spanish coming along?
To be honest, I just started last week. So I know I should have started a few months ago, but I have like a little Spanish from my, high school days. So it's like definitely been a brain, like a mind meld. I'm like, oh my goodness, my brain is hurting so much. I actually just came from a Spanish class, like it's been over Zoom, so it's great, but
Oh,
my
cool.
brain is definitely struggling.
Wow, that's great. How fun. This is going to be such an adventure for you. Oh my gosh, I
Yeah,
hope you'll keep
I'm
us
excited.
updated.
Yeah, I'm very excited. I've been wanting to do this for so long. So,
Yes. So what made you choose Mexico? Was it you always wanted to go there? Was there a reason you picked Mexico over somewhere else, just from a therapist or licensing perspective or anything like that? I'm just
yeah.
curious.
Well, yeah, I think, I haven't really spent that much time in Mexico. I've been to Mexico City for a long weekend, a couple other places like Tulum, but
Mm.
I don't have a very strong impression of it. But I do have some Spanish background, and it's because I'm in New York, Mexico is like an easier place to get to. The time
Hmm.
zone aligns pretty well. It's only 1 hour time difference
Oh,
from
nice.
New York. And I think that's also important. Like it makes it a little easier to do this work when you don't have to deal with like rescheduling or like thinking about changing your schedule to accommodate people. And like, because where I am, it's like East Coast time zone. So time
Hmm.
zone was a factor, distance was a factor, knowing that I could go home if something happened, especially during a pandemic, like if I had to
Yeah.
leave for some reason or see family. As far as licensing goes, I do know that I know a lot of therapists in Mexico. And so I have heard, and I've done a little bit of my own research, but mostly it's like been from Facebook groups that the license that I have, I'm a mental health counselor. It is not something that Mexico regulates. So as
Okay.
far as that goes, I am legally allowed to, or at least not legally prevented from practicing as a therapist in Mexico.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I've been doing a lot of research on, like different states, working in different states, which will allow it, which won't allow it, just because
Mm-hmm.
I want to have that information for other traveling therapists. But I'm so curious about just each state. So New York, I guess, for a licensed mental health counselor is fine. They're fine if you're out of the state as long as your client is physically located in the state. I'm guessing is New York's.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Unless whatever state I'm in has their own regulations about me practicing, which is, I've heard some states also have that regulation that even if you're not even seeing clients in their state, they will still regulate you if you, as a therapist, are physically in their state. So,
Yep.
like, that makes it complicated too, right? Like, you have to be licensed in the state you're in physically
Mm-hmm.
and the state that your clients are in. So,
Totally. Yeah, it's been
yeah.
really eye opening. Like, I'm putting together actually a guide, like a freebie for people to download that want to travel. And off the top of my head, I think Kansas was one. And God, I can't even think of them. But there are definitely some states out there that say you may not practice in this state and see your client unless you're licensed in this state. And I've even emailed back and I said, but my clients are in Virginia. Is that what you mean? And they're like, yeah, you have to be licensed in the state. So there's definitely like 10 states that are off my list,
Yeah.
of being a traveling therapist because of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I think that guide will be so welcome because this is probably the most confusing part about, doing this, or the most stressful part, right? To figure out, am I in compliance? Am I in the gray zone? What's actually legal, right?
Yeah, really. Because, for example, and some of the states don't answer at all. Like, they just don't respond to you. I've tried calling.
Mm-hmm.
California is one of those. I was just in California for 10 days and I don't have an answer from them. So,
Yeah.
I saw my clients, I've made numerous attempts to try to get an answer for them. So I'm just documenting that I've made multiple attempts. And for those of you listening that are struggling with that, that's the best way I've heard to deal with it. If you have to be in another state, as long as you're making attempts, you're documenting it, but try to find out about the state that you're traveling in for sure, or the country. And it sounds like
Yeah.
Mexico's fine if you're over
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. I
Mm-hmm.
think, yeah, internationally it's even harder because, some of them are, you
Yes.
have to ask in their language if it's, you're contacting a board or something. So I can see that being really complicated.
Yeah, it really is. So, are there any, just for Mexico, for people that are listening that might want to go to Mexico, are there any like issues with like visas? Like if you're there for a certain amount of time? Just, I think I've read something about that, but I can't remember.
Yeah, generally Mexico, I mean, if you're American, they will give you 180 days as part of,
Oh, okay.
it's just the typical visa that you can get as a tourist. I
Okay.
have heard, and it's December right now, but I have heard that they have become more strict on that and that they're not necessarily granting every American tourist the full 180 days. Like they will ask you more questions these days about like how long are you going to be here? Where are you going to be? That's what I've been hearing from different American travelers,
Hmm.
just from like Facebook. But yeah, they have a 100, typically they have a 180-day visa that you get. And
Okay.
I definitely have heard of some expats who, at the end of that, they leave the country and then they come back. But
Hmm.
I also know that if you wanted to become a resident, it is not, it's a pretty easy process compared to other
Oh,
countries. So just from
interesting.
just from my Facebook groups, though, nothing that I have researched myself through their website.
Yeah. Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I'm always curious about that stuff too. Like, how does that work? I guess this is all
Mhm.
stuff you have to pay attention to if you're traveling and
Yeah,
want to work
yeah.
internationally. Mm-hmm.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So, have you told your clients, or are you going to tell your clients? I'm just curious how that process is going for you.
Yeah, that is interesting. I have not, I don't think I haven't, no, I haven't told my clients. I have done some traveling this year where, because I always think about that too, like, oh, well, they're so used to this background. This is my usual
Right.
this is my therapy background. But during the times that I have traveled this past year, one time I told them and the other time I didn't. And it's interesting. Some clients will ask more about it, and some clients will not even say anything about it. Even if it's clearly a different place, they won't say anything about it. They'll just like proceed. So I kind of leave
Yeah.
it to my clients. I haven't announced that I'm going anywhere because I'm not changing their schedules. There was one time when I did go to South Africa and I had to change their schedule. So I told them I was traveling. I don't know if I told them exactly where I would be. Some people asked, and the people that asked, I did tell them because I was changing their time to a very different time, like, oh, very early New York time versus, they used to have an evening appointment. So
Mm-hmm.
because the time difference caused me to have to make schedule changes, I did tell people that I was on vacation, but I was taking 1 week in between two vacation weeks to work, and so that's
Mm-hmm.
what I told them. But I haven't told them about this upcoming travel, so that might be an
Yeah.
interesting conversation to have.
Yeah, I've heard different perspectives on that. I tell my clients, and that they'll say, because my background changes. They'll say, "Well, where are you today, Kim?" I'll be like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I'm in California, wherever." And they, a lot of them join with me, and they, "Oh, that's so fun," and then we continue on. But yeah, I know some therapists don't want to tell and don't want to share that much detail.
So do you tell
Yeah.
them ahead of time, or do you tell them when your background changes?
They pretty much, ever since I went all online back, after I took Amber's course, I eventually told them I was moving away from Virginia altogether. I moved down to Florida because we were going to do the digital nomad thing. Like, we moved here in February 2020, and then COVID hit, so we settled, but now we're getting ready to do the real thing soon. I'm so excited about it. But yeah, so I just kind of shared the journey with them because most of them I've had for a long time. They transitioned from the brick and mortar to the telehealth, and then
Hmm.
you know now I'm going to just be in a different state, and now I'm kind of sharing, well, I'm going to be traveling a lot more, or like I said, they'll see different backgrounds and they'll say, well, where are you today? And they're kind of like invested in it a little bit, my story about
Hmm.
just like being on an adventure kind of thing, you know.
Yeah. I do think it's
I
like
think it's
really
cool.
great. It's great like modeling for certain clients too, right?
Yeah, like I have one client that's like terrified to fly or even drive her car, really. And, she's always amazed that I'm able to just hop on a plane and go. Like you, like a 16-hour flight, she would be like, oh my God. But I like modeling that. Like, yeah, it's not bad. You could do it too. This is how I get through a flight if I'm anxious, that kind of thing. So it's good for topics sometimes, like clinical topics, therapeutic topics
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
well. Yeah.
I agree.
But yeah, I mean, nobody's really, I read on the online groups like, some clients might get upset or, even like, jealous that you're able to travel. Some of that stuff might come up, but even that I think is good content for a session, to
Yeah.
explore like, why is that coming up? Let's talk
Yeah.
about that. So, but yeah, I've had a really good response overall.
Okay, that's good to hear. Yeah, this will
Yeah.
be my first time. So I also agree. I think some of my clients are drawn to me because I have made career changes like myself. And so I have
hmm
clients like that. And I've also just in our work, like have clients who are in transition generally and are considering leaving New York or wanting to do more traveling. So it might be interesting to see what comes up after
Yeah.
we start talking about this.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, obviously every clinician has their own boundaries and what they feel comfortable with.
hmm
I'm kind of an open book. I do a lot of self-disclosure. I use it in sessions.
Yeah.
But I think it only enhances the rapport and deepens the relationship and we can do better work that way. It's just kind of my perspective on it.
hmm Yeah.
But yeah, yeah. So let's see, shifting gears a little bit. I have so many questions I want to ask you. I'm just curious, what are you gonna, are you like in an apartment and renting, or are you gonna like, what are you gonna do with where you live now? What's that process been like? 'Cause I think people wonder
Yeah.
about that.
So, since this is just a test for me, I am keeping my apartment. And
Okay.
yeah, I figured like, I'm gonna go see what's in Mexico. And while I've had this idea of wanting to work remotely for a long time, I also just want to give myself some time to see if that's actually the reality aligns with like what I've been thinking about and just go test it out. And so my plan is to be away for about 3 months, maybe 4 months, and then come back to New York and see how I feel then, right? And if I have really enjoyed myself and I want to continue, then I would consider renting out my apartment here. So that would require
Nice.
like, sort of packing up and everything. So it is like a decision to make, but I'll think about that when I come back.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
I think that's so smart to just kind of like test the waters and make sure it's something that you really want to do, because we're kind of in the same boat a little bit, like I've always had this like digital nomad dream, but now that it's like really going to be a thing, we're kind of like, are we ready
Yeah.
for this?
Yeah.
Are we
Yeah.
sure we don't want to have like a home base, like
Yeah.
somebody somewhere that
Exactly.
just feels comfortable, because
Yeah.
Airbnbs are great, but they don't always feel like home,
Yeah.
so
That's
we're kind
exactly
of
how I feel too, because I'm from New York. So I've always like, this is my home. And so the
yeah.
idea of like giving up my residence just feels like, wow, that's real. And where will I call home? And I think it's an idea like that I need to just think differently about. And I think that's why for me, I'm just focusing on, okay, first step. Let's just do the actual first
hmm
step, which is to explore Mexico. All these other questions about, am I giving up my apartment? Am I going to do this? Where am I going to have my stuff? Like, let me just do this first. If I really
yeah.
enjoy it, I'm sure all that other stuff will figure itself out.
That's so true. That's such a good way
Yeah.
to look at it. Just stay in the present and just let one moment take you to the next and figure it out
Yeah.
from there.
Yeah.
I love that.
Because, if I hate it, then I come back. That's the worst case, right? And that's not a
Yep.
worst case at all. It's just, okay, I gave it a chance.
Yeah. And we keep saying the same thing. We're like, okay, well, if it's awful, we're like, we can't do this another minute. We'll just rent an apartment somewhere and just,
Yeah.
you know.
And I actually don't even think that's what's going to happen either, right? Like, I think we both know it's probably going to be really great, a great experience.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so how about if you tell us about a time where you were traveling and you really got thrown for a loop, and how did you handle that, like the adversity or whatever happened?
Yeah. Well, my most recent vacation was like my first vacation all year, and this was in November. And I think so many things threw me for a loop during this vacation. It was a 3 week vacation. So there was a
Wow.
lot of time for things to go wrong. And I think just because, traveling during the time of COVID is just extra complicated. And I think at one point I took the wrong COVID test. I took the rapid test when they needed the
Oh,
PCR. I was traveling to Italy and to South Africa. And then another thing that went wrong, not really travel related, when I was in South Africa, I was seeing some clients. And during that time, daylight savings ended. And
oh,
I had in my mind like mixed up, the fallback, I reversed it. So I ended up scheduling clients, and it was like actually 2 hours later than I originally thought. And that
oh
that was
no.
like very late my time in South Africa. So one quick tip is like there are websites out there where you can type in what time it is on a certain date, year, in a certain place, and do the same, and it'll tell you what time it is on that date. So it could be a date in the future, a date in the past, and it'll tell you what
Wow.
time it is because it accounts for daylight savings time. Because certain countries don't have it, certain countries do, but they
Yes.
also start it at a different time than the United States or end at different times. So it gets confusing if you're traveling during March, April, or October,
Mm,
November, because there's a variety of times that it ends and starts. So that's something
that is a
that
great tip.
that threw me for a loop for sure. And then the last thing was just travel related. I happened to be leaving Cape Town the day that all the flights got shut down. And
Oh my
so
gosh.
my flight got canceled. And then I was on the phone trying to reschedule myself, and they were not allowing anyone to go through Europe then. So I ended up flying through Nairobi. And then in Nairobi, they
Wow.
held our flight, and they just decided to test us all. So it was like a lot of just travel plans sort of being disrupted, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of very emotional people on my flight, of course,
Yes.
understandably. That was just a fluke for sure.
Right. And I've had that happen as well. And, just from your perspective, how do you handle that? You just try to call the airlines or go to the airport and hope that they'll reroute you and just
Yeah.
kind of hang out at the airport? How did you?
I would definitely not advise going to the airport and thinking that there's going to be a rep there who's going to be very helpful. No, that's not going to happen.
Okay,
Unlikely.
good tip.
But definitely the best thing is to call the airline.
Okay.
I mean, I started doing that early on in the day because I've been watching the news, and I called Air France and they said, "Oh, no, your flight's just as scheduled, no
Oh my
delays, no
gosh.
changes." And I just thought, okay, these people don't know yet. Like it's a developing sort of story. And then on the way to the airport, I called Air France again from the Uber, and I started getting confirmation then. And then they didn't even let us know that our flight was canceled until we arrived at the
Oh,
airport. So it
oh
was a
my
very
gosh.
late cancellation. By then, there was nobody really at the airport. So I would say first thing to do is to call the airline and see if you can, rebook yourself. And it's going to take a long time, but
Mm,
just
mm.
do it and then double check, double confirm the new flights that they send, have them wait on the phone until you get the email that says you're on the new flight, because I've had, some issues there too. So
Wow, great tips. Yeah, I mean, you never want that to happen, but occasionally it does. All of a sudden,
yeah,
it's like, oh, your flight's been canceled.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah. And just, having to like come back from it can be hard too. Like I remember being at the airport and thinking like, what? And just taking a moment, like, okay, well, this is the reality. Now what? you know?
I'm going to have to deal with this. I don't have a flight.
Yes.
What am I going to
Yes.
do now?
Yes.
Yeah, we got stranded in, I mean, it's a great place to be stranded, Punta Cana in the Dominican Republic for a week because there were blizzards back in Virginia. We were flying back to Virginia. So they
Yeah.
canceled our flights for, I mean, you couldn't get a flight out for a week. So
Yeah.
we had to find an Airbnb and, had to rough it out for another week in Punta Cana. But,
Yeah. I think
yeah,
that's kind of like the solution, right? It's like, okay, well, accepting it and thinking of it in a different way. Like, okay, not the worst place to be stranded. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I'll take it.
Yeah,
Right.
I'll deal with it if I have to.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. That's very helpful because I know a lot of people have that come up for sure. What would your like old like brick and mortar like or agency self say to your current like online traveling self if you could like give advice to that person back then?
I think this part of me was always there. And I think it was just like this hesitation to like, or just like not sure how it could actually work.
Hmm.
And I think I would just tell my previous self, like, it's very possible. It sounds difficult to coordinate. It sounds like there's a lot of pieces, but I would just say, like, trust your intuition, trust yourself. This is what you want to do, right? Because I think I've always wanted to, and it's like, well, I'm not sure how to do it. I don't know if I can do it. Like, what would people
Hmm.
think? And I think, like,
Yeah.
now the world has changed, but it's still hard, right? I think you still need to just push forward always if you
Hmm.
want to do something, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, just take the like we were talking about earlier, just the next step
Yeah, just
and
take the
you'll get
first
there.
step. Hmm.
Hmm. Try not to get too overwhelmed with the what ifs.
Hmm.
Right.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
you don't need the full plan, right? You can kind of have the idea and then take the first step to figuring it out.
Hmm. Yes, thank you. Thanks for sharing that. How can people get a hold of you? They want to learn more about you, or if a client even hears this and they want to work with you, can you tell them a little bit
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
yourself and how to get a hold of you?
Yeah, I have an Instagram account, but I'm not very active on it. But on my Instagram, there is like a link where you can find me at my website. But it's Therapy with Diana on Instagram. I'm part of this collective called Bridges Mental Health, which
Huh.
is a mental health resource for the Asian Pacific Islander South Asian American community. It's really like a New York
Wow.
City area resource, but we have a directory of therapists that work with that community. And we also have an Instagram called at Bridges Mental Health. And basically through my Instagram, you can find links to everything else. So if you are sort of like intrigued, you can find me at Therapy with Diana on Instagram.
Thank you. And we'll definitely share all these details in the show notes too, so you guys can find Diana if you'd like to reach out to her.
Oh, yeah. And I'm also like happy to connect with therapists too who are doing something similar or would like to.
Absolutely. Yeah. Will you be sharing your journeys at all online or
I I don't know. I haven't really thought about it because I'm not as active on Instagram professionally, so I'm not really sure.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I have to think about that because I'm sure I'll be talking about it with clients, but maybe there's a post in that, maybe like on my blog
Yeah.
at some
Okay.
point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'd love to follow it. And of course, in the group, the Facebook group, The Traveling Therapist, please share. I can't wait to
Yeah.
hear about it and see your
Yeah.
pictures and just hear about your adventures and how it goes. I'm excited for you. Sounds really
Yeah.
awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you so much for coming today. I'm sure this is going to help inspire so many people that are just nervous to do it and to hear about you just taking the leap is so cool.
Yeah. Thank you for having this podcast because this is definitely something that would have been so helpful if I had been, like a few years ago when I was first thinking about this. So it just normalizes it and makes it easier for people to imagine that they can do it too. So yeah, I'm so happy to be a part of it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening to the Traveling Therapist podcast. For show notes, links, and downloads, head over to thetravelingtherapist.com, where you'll be able to learn more about my journey, the courses I've created for you, and other exciting resources to make your dreams become a reality. If you've enjoyed this episode, please share with your traveling therapist friends, subscribe to the podcast, and if you loved this episode, please leave a review.